What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our last Godzilla Kong, the New Empire Playmates giant figure review. It is our final giant figure as of now, unless they make more. There is a chance that more could be coming, but as of now, I don't know yet. But this is the last of the three that I've been doing. This is, of course, the giant Skar King with Whiplash, or Whipslash. I think that's how they say it. I'm just gonna pronounce it as the Whiplash. But this is, of course, a scaled up version of the 6-inch Skar King that I already reviewed. And of course, this is like the bigger, slightly more pricier version of it. Now, of course, I was very pleased with what I got from the Godzilla Evolved, as well as the Giant Kong. Both of them were pretty good figures, and I thought they were more than just scaled up versions of the 6 inches. I thought they were direct improvements from their original giant figures from the Godzilla vs. Kong line back in 2021. Now, Skar King here has a bit of an advantage, being that he is a completely new character. He is, of course, the main antagonist of the movie, but it is the first time this character has ever made an appearance. So this is the first time this character is even getting a giant figure. So there are no expectations set with this one. We're looking at this figure with a fresh new set of eyes and seeing how good has Playmates made this figure. But I guess you can really compare him with Kong. Kong's old giant figure severely was underwhelming. And so Skar King here being a monkey as well. Let's see how well Playmates has nailed it, being the first time this character has become a figure. Right, first and foremost, we've got the Kong and Godzilla render on the corner right here. And we have the giant Skar King with Whiplash fonts. And of course, we got the legendary and Toho logos beneath it and the Playmates logo. And then on the side, this is what it looks like. And then on the other side, this is what it looks like with the French, le français. At the bottom, this is your average packaging style. You may pause the video if you want to really read everything in full detail, but what this essentially does is just advertise the other two figures that are included on this line. And then finally, of course, we have the back. The back of these boxes is just a list of every other figure that Playmates has put out in the past, and this is how they advertise you to collect them all. With the giant figures case, that hasn't been that sort of advertising. In fact, all they did is have a render or a photo of the exact figure on the back with a cool looking background and a font. And Skar King's font here is pretty sick. You got a just evil looking fonts there. That's the best way I can describe it. And if you watch the Kong and Godzilla review that I did, you'll notice that their boxes also had their own unique fonts and photo and all that. Let's open up this package and take out Skar King. Let's get right into it. Alright, the figure is out of its packaging. As I said, this is a scaled up version of the 6-inch Skar King, and here he is. The 6-inch Skar King, of course, they follow very similar color schemes, but you will notice the giant one here has a darker color scheme than the 6-inch one. I don't know how well the camera is picking it up, but you can tell that the Skar King, the smaller Skar King, is a lot lighter compared to the giant one. Does that mean everything is the same? Well, I would say the biggest difference is, of course, you can actually detach his whip here to use as a weapon for him. And I don't think you can for the giant one here. But I can tell you right away, the printing is the same and the articulation is the same. And Skar King's case here had a lot of articulation. So the playability was fantastic for this one. I was very, very impressed when I reviewed this. And then later on, I reviewed the Battle Roar Skar King. Now this Battle Roar Skar King is great, but it lacks articulation. severe articulation. There was not a lot of articulation to begin with because it's just limited to his arms, wrists, and his entire leg. There's not a lot of joints that is attached on this one, so his pose can be a little bit awkward because it kind of looks like he's doing a Macarena dance or something like that. Like, it's not the greatest, but the main feature of the Battle Roar figure is the Battle Roar, so you can't go wrong with it. This is great as his own Battle Roar figure, but this Giants one is the penultimate one. I do believe they may make a bigger Skar King in the future. We'll have to see. I would love to see a RC Skar King. That would be pretty awesome. But this Skar King hasn't really fixed any of the issues from the other two Skar Kings. No, not really, because I didn't really have too much beef with the smaller Skar Kings in the first place. You will probably know that the Godzilla Evolved, the smaller figures, I wasn't too happy with the colors. And the giant Godzilla was able to fix all of that. In Skar King's case here, there wasn't really anything to fix, and the same can be said for Kong. Skar King here is pretty good as a giant version as well, and the bigger the toy is, the more interactive it's going to be when a kid is playing with it. So that means, this being a new figure, I don't have an old Skar King to compare it to. This is the original Skar King, giant Skar King. And so how good is it as a big fig? I was quite happy when I saw that Kong had a lot of articulation. Skar King's case here, he has very good articulation, and it's the same articulation you can expect from the 6-inch figure. You can move the legs forward and back. You can also twist it a little bit, so you can spread his legs out a little bit. There's also knee articulation, so you can see great knee articulation here. It just folds in very nicely. Now there is no feet articulation, but that is a given. That is okay, honestly. It's the same situation as Kong, no feet articulation, but you have enough articulation for the leg and the knee itself, so I don't think the foot articulation is too much of a problem. Now other points of articulation, of course, comes with the arms. You can move the arms forward and back. Of course, it is a little bit tight given that the joints are still quite fresh, and of course you can lift the arm up if you want and fold the elbows in. So there is great articulation here already because the playability is important, and I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of different poses you can strike up with the Skar King. And of course, you can twist the hand as well. Look at this. You can twist the hand. Very, very nice. Now, the whip isn't detachable, but I would assume if it was, this is where you can attach it so you can hold it. As for the other arm, it's the same situation going on here. You can move the arm forward and back, and of course, lift it up, fold the elbow in, fold the elbow out. Great elbow articulation, and of course, wrist articulation. You can see he's closing his fists for this one, so he's about to punch Kong or Godzilla here, but you can rotate the wrist a bit and have him fold up for a punch. Now the best thing about Skar King, compared to Kong and Godzilla, Skar King had one exclusive articulation feature that truly exceeded from all the other monsters, is that he has waist articulation, and the 6-inch one had it. And it looks like the giant one here has it too. As you can see, it's like on a ball socket, so when you twist it, you can twist it all the way around. How great is that? He has lots of flexibility, lots of body movement space. Fold his hand a little bit, it literally looks like he's like dodging something, or he's about to wind up an attack, wind up a punch. It is honestly very, very versatile, and I love it that even for the giant figure, you have the waist movement, which I think will make the articulation experience a lot cooler. Now, the head is on a ball socket, surprisingly. For Kong, his head was only like on a screw, so you can only rotate it left and right, and that's about it. For Skar King's case here, you have a full ball socket happen here, so you can, sort of move his head a little bit, side to side, up and down. The space of the movement isn't that great, but at least it's on a ball socket, meaning that he does have several points of articulation. So it's not just Kong where it's left and right. Skar King can actually look in all sorts of directions, which works perfectly with the waist articulation. So you can get some
great poses. Have him look this way, but then twist his body here or something. The articulation is very good on it. Like, you can see clearly Playmates has put the word play into this figure. Articulation aside, what about the visuals? How well does Skar King look? He is rocking this color that I like to address it as goji berry red. Now, in this giant Skar King's case, because he is giant, I assume they have more room to put more detail, and I guess they somewhat did. But of course, it is also more darker compared to the 6-inch one. So again, let's take a look at some of the colors. You can see the most obvious part is in his upper torso body area. You can see for the smaller one here, it's the same colors, but you can see there's like a fading pattern going on here. And the same can be said with the giant one here. So the Whipslash is covering the chest, I get it. I can't take it off, but try to just look through it. You can see that apart from the dark red, it is also fading with a bit of white. A bit of contrasting going on here, and I do like that. And the 6-inch one was able to do that. The 7-inch one, not so much, but the 6-inch one was able to do that pretty well. So I was quite happy with it. And it looks like they were able to do that here too. The fading is great, it adds great contrast, and it just makes the figure stand out as a whole. As for other shadings, you can see under his arms, you can see white is fading underneath the red here, and he does, I guess you can call these tattoos. So he has tattoos, you get a line here, and then his hands are just pure white. I think that is a good contrast. Red and white is not a commonly used color combination, and I see red and black more. So it's cool to see them like utilize his color scheme and actually still make him look like a villain. The same can be said with the other arm here. You can see the white is kind of fading, and then the tattoos on this arm, it's a bit different. It has 2 stripes, and yes, these are the exact same tattoo patterns as the 6-inch and the Battle Royale one. It's a good thing they kept continuity here. It's very important that that is reflected. Now, the Whipslash itself is quite detailed. You know, you get the texture of the bones sticking out. It is pretty sick looking, and it just wraps around his entire body very nicely. And funny enough, the Whipslash is able to somewhat fix a major issue when it comes to the giant figures. The screw holes. The curse of the screw hole looks like has made it to Skar King as well. He could not run away from it, and it is the same problem as Kong, whereas the screw holes are on the back, which is honestly better than Godzilla's case because his screw holes are just on one side of his body, which of course meaning you're gonna have to display him on one good side. For Kong and Skar King's case, because it's on their back, you can just display them on the front like this and you wouldn't really see it. But it doesn't mean they're not there, and it actually sticks out quite badly, even at the knees. For the same thing with Kong, I just wish they can make it the same color. Just paint the screws the goji berry red as well, just to camouflage it a little bit so it doesn't really stick out that badly. It would have been an otherwise perfect figure had it not been for the screw holes, because it just looks like Skar King's been getting acupuncture on the back. And funny enough, just like Kong, he's got a screw hole right above his butt cheeks. The funny thing is, the whip is able to cover at least 2 of it. So the whip somewhat fixes it, but of course these holes are still quite obvious. But I just find it amusing that the Whipslash was able to wrap around this body and cover some of the screw holes. So it's inadvertently kind of making it look better, but there's still a lot of screw holes still at large. Now, the tip of the Whipslash, of course, is like some jaw of some fallen titan. Either way, this whip looks cool. We also know it has a crystal blade thing at the end. It would be nice if they include that as well, but this is as cool as it can get. For a toy, you can't expect too much, so I think they've done a pretty good job enlarging the texture for this, because of course this is not detachable, whereas the 6-inch one is, but it's not as spiky, as I like to call it, as the giant one here for sure. But other than that, it's a good decoration. I kind of wish it was an accessory, but it works as a decoration on the figure itself, so no complaints from me from that. The last thing we're going to look at, of course, is the head. Now, people have been comparing Skar King to Kratos, and I can kind of see the resemblance, but he's got a pretty good color print going on here. Obviously, he's got the same color print as the 6-inch one and the Battle Royale one, but of course, being a bigger figure, bigger head means you got bigger space to put more details into it. And I gotta say, the face printing on him looks very nice here. It looks like he's snarling, he's ready to head into battle. He looks like he means business. It looks sick. And the colors, you can see while his tattoos are red, the rest of his head is mostly white. And in the back of his fur, you can see the white is kind of fading off into the red. I think that one looks great because this is a good transition. A major problem I had with the Evolved Godzilla was there was just a lot of awkward cutoff points with the transitioning bits of the colors. They were able to do it here. The white fades off into the red quite nicely here for Skar King's case, and so I think it's pretty good. Now, of course, the articulation is pretty immaculate, but you can't ignore the design here, and I gotta say the design is pretty well detailed for Skar King's case here, so I think it's a pretty good job. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just the overall texture, of course. The bigger one here is just like Kong, is a lot more glossier, while the smaller one you can kind of really see the fur highlighted pretty well. You can see the fur texture, and the same can be said with the Battle Royale one here. In fact, the Battle Royale one here, I know you can't tell, but when I'm holding it, it does certainly feel more fuzzy. Here, it just feels very glossy, like the fur is very light, it's more smooth, but you can see visually it's just captured better. You can actually see the fur on it, except where the screw holes kind of ruin it at that area. But apart from that, the articulation is really what leads this figure well. For a giant size, you will rely on it looking nice. This figure does look nice, don't get me wrong, but I personally feel like it is really the articulation that is currently carrying the stature of this figure, because I think for a scaled up version, you are given more space and more freedom to really put some good details in. For a toy, remember, this is a toy in the end. This isn't a Hiya Toys or SH Monster Arts figure. This is intended for kids. But how big is that exactly? Well, let's compare him to Kong then, his monkey counterpart, where these two will be going at it. And it does look like Kong here looks a lot muscular, but it does look like Skar King is slightly taller here. And so here is the giant Godzilla Evolved. Now there is no shot that Skar King will be taller and bigger than Godzilla. That is a given. And it's clearly highlighted here. Godzilla is still bigger and taller than him. Now one more comparison, because why not? Here is Mechagodzilla. Now it does look like Mechagodzilla is going to be slightly taller than Skar King. I wonder if these two characters will ever meet. Probably never, but it would be nice if they did. Who would actually win the fight? So, out of 10, what do I give this Skar King? Being the new guy, the first time Playmates done this, there is no expectations. There is no new and old Skar King to compare to. So I think Playmates has done a pretty good job on him, so I'm going to give the Skar King an 8 out of 10. Number 1, the most obvious one is the screw holes. No matter how good you're gonna make it, the screw holes will always make it look awkward, and I just wish a simple paint job over it will camouflage them easily. Done. Problem solved. Number 2, I do wish the Whipslash was detachable. It would have been nice to actually have a giant accessory to interact with. I was kind of hoping to actually have the Whipslash being held in his hand, but I think it's okay. That is all I gotta say for the giant Skar King from, of course, the Godzilla Kong line from Playmates, and that is a wrap on the giant figures as a whole. Now, of course, they may make more in the future, and if they do, you'll be damn sure I'll do videos on it. But for now, that's a wrap for this review. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out everything I just compared this Skar King with earlier, all the reviews are out. Of course, the Godzilla and Kong review, I just did it. And if you want to see that Mechagodzilla review, that was an old video from 2021. Be sure to check that as well. As for now, thanks for watching. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. As for now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.